So we're starting chapter 9, 9.1% and fractions. This next slide I want you to go ahead and write down for me. All right, today we're going to be talking about how to move from a percent to a fraction, and then also how to turn a fraction into a percent. So you can see pretty simply right there, if it's a percent, so say it said something like 75%, okay? So 75%, simply what you would do is you would put 75 over 100, all right? And then, does anybody know what that would be reduced to in a fraction? 3/4, okay? So 75% is the same thing as 3/4. But let's say that I started off with 3/4, okay? So what you would do is you would take this 3/4 and you would divide it, okay? Go ahead and put it in your calculators for me. So when you put 3/4 in there and you divide it, what decimal comes out? Okay, 0.75. So you can see right there, you put it in as a decimal, move the decimal 2 places to the right. So if I do that, 1, 2, what percent am I left with? 75%. And the main thing you'll see that last one that tells us is just make sure you put the percent sign there, okay? Because it's asking you to change from a fraction to a percent. So that's kind of what we're going to be working with today. Write this down for me. Number 1, write the percent as a fraction. So today I gave you back your tests that we had before. Let's say you got 96% on your test. What was that out of? 96 out of how many points? Out of 100 points, okay? So let's say that you got a 37% on a test. How would I change that to a fraction? 37 over 100. You're not going to keep the percent sign right there, but you're going to put 37 over 100. Now, I want you to put that into your calculator and see if it reduces. If it stays the same, that means it cannot be reduced. But if it comes out as a different fraction, that means it can be reduced. So when you put 37 100ths into your calculator, what comes out? Okay, so that means it cannot be reduced, and that's your answer. That's all you have to do for changing a percent to a fraction. So now, how many of you guys, you can look at that and you would know what fraction 50% is? A half, okay? So I say only 50% of the class is here today, that means only a half is. But I want to see the work. So what am I going to do? 50%, that's 50 over what? 50 over 100. Now, the way that you're going to get a half is because it can be reduced. If I put divided by 50 on top, divided by 50 on bottom, what do I get? That equals 1/2. So as always, I always want your answer to be in simplest form. So please make sure whenever you're turning it into a fraction that you always reduce it. Remember, you can stick that into your calculator, 50 over 100. When you hit the equal sign, it will come back out as a 1/2. Write this down for me. Number 2, write the fraction as a percent. So we are simply going to be doing the opposite of what we just did. All right, if you look at our notes that we just said, you're going to be looking at the section that says changing from a fraction to a percent. What's the first thing that I told you to do for that? What's it? Divide, okay? So put it into your calculator, 4 divided by 5. What comes out? 0.8, okay? So you're changing it, when you divide it, you're changing it to a decimal. So right here, I've got 0.8. Look at your notes once again that we just wrote down, changing from a fraction into a percent. The first thing I do is divide, then what do I do?
Move it over 2 times.
Move the decimal over 2 places to the right. 1, 2. Now my decimal is over here. What number goes into that little?
0.
A 0, okay? And now the last thing it says is to add a what?
Percent.
Add a percent sign. So what's my answer?
80%.
80%. I want you to do the next one on your own. When you divide, what decimal do you get?
75%.
What decimal do you get?
I mean 0.75.
0.75. How many places to the right do I move it?
2.
And what do you get?
75%.
75%. Once again, it will be an incorrect answer if you don't put the percent sign, okay? So that is how you change from a fraction to a percent. Any questions? Here we go. Find the percent of the number. When we're finding the percent of the number, there's 2 steps you want to do. First thing you're going to do is change that percent to a decimal, and then you'll multiply the total together. So it says, what is 60% of 75? How do I change 60% to a decimal?
Move it over 2 times. Put the decimal in the back and like move it.
Okay, it's as if the decimal is right there because decimals are always at the end. And where do I move it? To the left or to the right?
To the left.
Okay, to the left 2 times. So what do I get when I move that over? What decimal do I have? 0.6. Okay, so we're just going to put 0.6. So that was my first step. Change the percent to a decimal. And now I have to multiply the total. So I'm taking 60% of 75. So you're just going to do 0.6 times 75. What is 0.6 times 75? 45. All right, you do not want to put a percent sign there, okay, because it's not 45%. You can see right here, we already know it's 60% of 75, so the answer is 45. I want you to try to do problem B on your own. Okay, what do I do? First part, change it to a decimal. 0.35, now what? Times 90, and what do you get?
31.5.
31.5 is correct. Do the last one on your own. Jakari, what do I do first? Okay, when I change the percent to a decimal, what do I get? 0.4. Addison, what do I do next? Good job. And Sherelle, what's my answer? 60 is correct. How many of you got 60 on your own? All right, very good job. Okay, I want you to pull out that other piece of paper that you have. Today we're going to go ahead and do a classwork assignment. It's only going to be 6 problems, so I want you to write this down. 9.1, pages 4, or just page 417, and write down these 6 problems for me. And that is our lesson today for 9.1.